I'm Sophia Jarosz. I'm assistant producer. It's my first show at SLOC.
I am Adeline Rose Mletzko. I am young Tarzan, and this is also my first show at SLOC.
My name is Kaleigh Green, and I am assistant choreographer, and this is also my first show at SLOC.
Welcome.
Welcome.
I'm Melissa and Hoffmann, and this is not my first show, and I'm going to silently count up so I figure out what show this is. I'm ill-prepared to say that.
I'm Gary Hoffmann, married to Melissa Hoffmann, and I really can't count at this hour on a Saturday, so I'm just gonna say I've done a bunch of shows here at SLOC.
So how did you guys meet?
At SLOC, at the previous building that SLOC was in. You want to say a little bit about how we met?
It was for the production of 1776 back in 1989, and it was the first production I had ever gone out for at SLOC, and I wound up being cast in the lead role of John Adams, and Melissa was on the production team as the set decor designer, and after the first read-through, your turn.
After the first read-through, I introduced myself to Gary and said, we love to meet new people. Welcome to SLOC. And I think that's where you claim that you knew by then things maybe were going to happen and we were going to get married. We had a contest about who knew first, right? Yeah, it was a rehearsal period where I was not on stage. I was probably doing my first technical stuff I had done at SLOC, and I was doing the set decor. So I was working on the Proctor set with colors and stuff, but I certainly had an opportunity to notice that John Adams was kind of paying a lot of attention to me.
So, what was your first production?
So my first production was Half a Sixpence, and it was in 1979, I think. I think it was Thanksgiving of that year, or 1980. And I was the female lead opposite Steve Leifer, and it opened on Thanksgiving night that year. Interesting marketing, right? And it was set in England, and it had fun big chorus numbers and nice little intimate numbers and dances, and it was just a gas to perform at Proctor's.
What was your first show at SLOC?
My first show at SLOC was 1776, and I did the same show in the same role 30 years later for SLOC.
How has SLOC changed over the years? What's different?
The building. A vast improvement over what we had as our last facility on State Street. I think more of a focus on community, and in more recent years, outreach. Not just, hey, let's put on a show and keep a theater going, but with a disciplined strategy of how to go about doing things. And also, since we own the building in which we're recording, and we have a tenant here, we store our costumes in this building, and we store other things in this building. We have to maintain it. We have to be a landlord, and that's not an easy task with an old building and an entirely volunteer staff. So when things go wrong in this old building and the tenant asks that we get things fixed, it's a challenge for us to respond timely as responsible landlords. And we're still running a community theater company next door. So that's different. We didn't have such responsibilities and demands at the other building. We have a certainly better facility. We have a much better theater with tiered seating that we did not have in the old facility. A better stage, better access to dressing rooms. What else would you say?
I would say that this kind of conversation would never have taken place at the old SLOC. Not because anybody would have said it was a bad idea. I just think nobody was really thinking about how do we get younger people involved in theater? How do we get people who have all kinds of backgrounds, all kinds of ethnicities? There really was not thought about that. And I think that was because of the times. And I think that there was, I know from conversations I had in early SLOC, there was an assumption that, well, the people that come to us to audition are the ones that are interested. And the ones that we don't see, whether it's a racial group or an age group demographic, they're just not, they're not interested in theater.
Yeah.
And look what we have now, and that's not an accident. That's because people in SLOC started to think about being inclusive and reaching out. I will note that when Gary's talking about early SLOC, the people who seemed like the old guard, the people who were on the board, I might have thought some of them were cranky, and now we're their age. We're a little, I'm a little older than some of those people were then, and so it's wonderful for me to see that there are all ages involved in the decision making. It's not just people of a certain age, people that have had a lot of experience. Everybody has a hand in coming up with ideas. One other thing about that, in the old SLOC, when it was a show that had a chorus and there were dance numbers and there were a lot of people on stage stood and sang or swayed while the really gifted dancers danced. So shows were very, I'm a lead and I'm gonna have lines now. Oh, now the chorus is gonna dance. Now, and have you ever? You probably have never had experience like that. So, okay, where are we now? What's the question?
What has your involvement looked like over the years? Like mainly on stage or mainly like off stage?
Fortunately, I like to think of it as a nice, even mixture. I've been on stage in, as I indicated, a leading role or two, but also in supporting roles or in ensemble, or in one instance, just a walk-on. And I've directed. But I've also been involved with props, and I've helped out constructing sets, and sometimes if I'm not available to construct sets, I'll show up and say, what do you need? And they'll say, well, we need 3 of these and 4 of those and 5 of those, and I'll say, okay, I'll go to Lowe's and I'll get them for you. You keep building, I'll be right back. And that's a contribution. Otherwise, we would have had to have taken somebody who's skilled at making something out of the loop for an hour to go to Lowe's and fetch something and then come back. Whereas, no, I did that. I'm capable of shopping. No skills, no prior experience necessary. So I'd like to think that everybody pitches in one way or another. I've served on the board. Currently I'm a deputy facilities director, meaning I'm responsible for this building. If we need somebody to babysit with a contractor while the floor or a door or a window gets repaired, we all pitch in one way or another over time. So if I'm not on stage, I'm not directing, okay, I'm going to Lowe's or I'm babysitting a contractor. That's perfectly fine.
You've also created systems of organizing props and worked very closely with Melissa Peterson
Yes.
on that, and that's the kind of thing that, you probably get tired of something that's disorganized, right?
Yeah.
And you organize it, but then you keep at it so that other shows can access props and know where to find things.
And also we have a system of signing props out. We lend to other community theater groups. So if we are missing 3 of the 4 basketballs we have, God knows when we need a basketball other than baby, we can see on a list who has those basketballs out and when we can expect them back. And if we don't have them back by when we expect them, we know who to call to get them back. And I can be diplomatic on occasion. On occasion, I said. Let's see, what else? Thank you for
Do you wish that things were that organized at home?
You have another question?
I know I was answering for Gary too. That never happens. I have been on stage. I've had the privilege of co-producing, and that was also my first contact with the youth production, which, you know, gave me a glimpse of how talented young people in the area are, talented in all kinds of ways. And I've stage managed several times and always enjoyed not necessarily the authority of stage management, but working backstage, making it so that when people came off stage and needed props quickly, we were there. We helped with costume change. I loved to see how that came together. And I've also been privileged to play leads and other roles on stage.
And we've played opposite each other on stage. That's been a lot of fun.
We've been on a selection committee too.
We've been on show selection, show recommendation. Oh yeah, I did work crew.
Yep.
Deploy again.
Yep. So what was the next question?
So, do you have any words of wisdom or advice?
Yes, be open-minded and a contributor, and look out for the person next to you. You know, I think there had been, back in the old days, an attitude of, well, we're doing a show, and when we're done, I'm done. Whereas now we have a constant look to the future. It's not just how our shows in the current season go, but what are we doing to keep us running for the future? We had a lot of challenges. COVID was a challenge. When we had to shut down with the rest of the world, and oh my goodness, 90% of our income is from tickets that we're not selling. How do we keep the electric on? How do we pay the insurance? How do we pay the telephone bills? We had to get creative. And no, we're not doing a show right now. Now we're saving SLOC, we're maintaining it, we're keeping our head above water until the doors do reopen. Other things, being sensitive to the LGBTQ community. We just did a show, this one, that I directed this past May, that dealt with issues that guaranteed were not being dealt with in the old days. So I think we're being more progressive with the shows we select. But if you are someone who is interested in doing choreography, that you're not just doing choreography for the next show or for the next 20 shows, as some people do, that you make yourself available to do other things, to try other things. I never set out to do props, but I've been making them for years now. Thinking out for the greater good, that we're part of a community. Keeping the community in community theater is what I think is most important.
So we're talking about inclusion, and Gary's definitely talking about being flexible. Yep, it's a lot of fun to put on shows, but if something happens and we then need to think about, wait a minute, we have property that we manage, how do we pitch in and take care of that? What do we do? That's important. I would say 2 words of advice, and they're very connected. One is generosity, and one is abundance. There's room for everybody. There's room for everybody to have a moment if they want to performing, to be in a circle of people that are talking about what the good ideas are. There's just room for everybody in the conversation. And it comes from an abundance mindset. It's not scarcity. Oh, we don't, we can't really think about that right now. We can. And I can tell from the questions and the way you're asking them that you understand that it's for everybody.
Is there anything else that you want to tell?
Feel free to ask them too about their experience if you want them to talk. You're more than welcome.
Okay. Ooh, I know we can ask questions.
We have time for like maybe 1 or 2.
So
Okay.
this is your first time being connected. And do you feel welcomed?
Yes. I think everything's been really good so far. I think everybody's been very welcoming, and they just work together really well.
I found that having, on the production assistant standpoint, having an adult mentor, like that's always kind of like, we're always right behind them, has been really educational. And I learned a lot from you to just like follow right behind the choreographer and see how she does things. And then if she takes a step away, I can implement the
very welcomed with the surroundings and the people. They're all being very kind to me, even though I'm 2 or above years younger than them. But I feel very welcomed and
That's great. That's great. Is there anything that you would like to see done differently? Or you think could use some polish or change?
not really. I don't know.
All right. Awesome.